What's one type of security course I should do that will help me or help make me a better security officer? So when it comes to education for private security, I think that a lot of times we think more like in the box, which would be tactical training or firearms, medical training, things like that. But I think that for the vast majority of private security guards, what we really should be focusing on is more of those soft skills. I say this all the time. But really for most private security professionals, you're not going to be in this career for the remainder of your work life, right? So in my opinion, taking courses on communication, report writing, anything that has to do with technology, which would be being better understanding of AI or things like that. I think that those are courses that would really lend better to private security guards and professionals, and then also be more transferable when you guys are done with this career. Try to get out of the mindset of everything being tactical. I am just like anybody else. I love firearms training. I love medical training. I'm all for CQB classes and things like that. But I think that if you want to be in management, if you want to be in leadership or some of these roles where you're better able to do this career into your 50s, even your 60s and 70s, being better educated is always going to be the play. So in my opinion, going back to school, or even just taking college level courses on communication, courses on empathy, courses on interacting with people with mental illness, any sort of cultural studies I think are very important as well. And so for me, that would be my advice and suggestion to anyone who's asking that question. I recently started a career in security and I love it. Such a great job. But what would you say is the toughest difficulty working in security besides staying awake? So one of the most difficult aspects of working in security, I think, is the stigma and the stereotype of being a security guard. And I think that this is probably the thing that drives people out of security the most, and also probably what leads to security guards overreacting and quote unquote doing too much, right? So the typical image of a private security guard is Paul Blart. It's someone who's overweight, someone who's, going overboard with their interactions with people. And I think that for the vast majority of people, it's just hard. It's hard to do this job because no one looks at you as a private security guard and gives you any sort of respect, right? It's hard to tell your family, it's hard to tell your friends, it's hard to tell your girlfriend or your boyfriend that you're going to be a security guard. It just doesn't have kind of like a ring to it that gives a lot of credence or respect to the profession. Now, that being said, in reality, it's actually the opposite. You're the first responder before the first responder shows up. You actually have a lot of impact in your environment on people's safety, on people being able to navigate the retail space or the location where they're at. You really do have a needed and necessary job that has a lot of honor to it. But just the stereotypes around being in private security, I think, are very, very difficult for people to validate and quantify and feel comfortable with. For me, I think the hardest part for you doing your job is being comfortable, confident, and secure, no pun intended, in what you're doing, and not allowing the stigma of being a security guard to make you feel bad or inadequate. If that happens, that's where you can kind of slide into these gray areas and make mistakes or do things that aren't necessarily beneficial to you, the company, or the client that you're working for. But I'm happy that you're here, and I'm happy that you've joined this channel and that you're a part of this platform. And lean on us, lean on me, lean on the other people that are on this platform for help, for information, for guidance. Because if you like what you're doing and you're happy in it right now, you could be one of the ones that can make a career out of this. And ultimately, you could be one of those people that helps to help a person that's in need in that moment when the cops aren't there. Have you ever heard of Darien Long? If so, what's your thoughts on his way of doing security? I work in a very similar environment and would love some input. So for those of you who don't know, Darien Long is a very famous OG security guard content creator. Back in the early days of YouTube, this guy, I think he worked at a shopping mall in downtown Atlanta. Most of his videos are of him like being really aggressive and I guess kind of doing what needs to be done, so to speak, in that environment. Although his content is very engaging, he has way more subscribers than I'll probably ever have. He's produced a lot of videos that have gotten a ton of views. The unfortunate thing, and this is just my opinion, is that he plays into the worst stereotypes that befall private security. He goes overboard, he's overly aggressive, he puts his hands on people when maybe you don't need to. And in those situations, that can lead to a lot of problems. I personally know 2 private security guards who have lost their life, and you can probably directly correlate interactions that they had with people on the street that led to their demise. And this is no shades or shot towards them. So although I appreciate his channel, you could say that he was probably the first private security guard that had a reality show. He actually called his channel the greatest reality show ever, if I'm not mistaken. And it was all just uploaded body cam footage. But a lot of times I felt like he was not necessarily doing the right thing, but kind of playing to the camera. And for the vast majority of people, this is not 2015, this is 2025. And we live in a much more litigious society. We live in a society where people are more willing to press charges against private security. I don't think that a lot of those tactics and the way that he went about doing things are beneficial to the private security industry and definitely aren't going to be tolerated with 99.9% of the private security guards that are out there. If you're working in a similar environment to what Darien Long found himself in, my advice, just be professional. Be professional, do the right thing, operate from a position of legality, morality, empathy, all of those buzzwords and soft skills that we talk about that a lot of people hate to hear me say. At the end of the day, operating from that perspective is going to be way less problematic than doing things that you've seen on his channel. And again, that's no disrespect to him or anything that he's done. It's just my assessment, and at the end of the day, you did ask my opinion, so that's my thoughts on Darien Long. But super famous, made a huge impact on the private security industry, but in my opinion, just really plays into the worst stereotypes of what it means to be a private security guard, and I'm not really with that. Dallas, Texas just had a bounty hunter murder. Wow. This incident had 2 unlicensed security officers, well, expired license, that allegedly killed a guy. This caused a huge wreck. My question to you is, how do you feel about bail agents or bail enforcement? Bail agents or bail enforcement? I don't have a lot of experience with either. It's one of those highly unregulated aspects of our industry, kind of similar to bouncers. I think that they have a extremely dangerous job because the people that they're interacting with have already broken the law, number one, and they've already skipped out on their obligation to answer for whatever it is that they gotten themselves in trouble for. So right off the bat, anything that a bail enforcement agent comes up against is going to be met with resistance, right? I can't, for the life of me, even imagine what their job is like or how dangerous it is. Now, that being said, lack of regulation often leads to people getting into that industry that maybe shouldn't be there. People that might be criminals themselves, people that might have kind of a sketchy past history, people that might want to bend the rules or maybe do things that are more in a morally gray area. And this is not to talk down on the industry or throw any aspersions on anybody who works in those 2 industries, but that's just kind of been my experience in a limited fashion. I think that any industry where you don't have boundaries and regulations, it leads itself to being an area where people are going to do some crazy, sketchy things. I don't know the situation that happened in Dallas. It's hard for me to speak on that, but It doesn't surprise me, number one. I'm not shocked by it, number two. But here's the flip side of that coin. If you operate in an industry that doesn't have a lot of regulation, there's areas in the country where private security, there's really no regulation. There's no governing board. There's no requirements in terms of insurance or training. But the flip side of that is when something happens like this, when something goes south, and it will, when something bad happens, and it's going to, now the regulations and the boundaries that come after the fact are so aggressive. Now you can't carry a firearm. Now you can't make an arrest. Now you can't legally go hands-on, whatever it might be. So my stance on it is that I don't have enough information to speak directly to what happened in Texas, but I do know that industry-wide, bail enforcement, bounty hunters, there's a lot of gray area. And when you have that gray area, it's only a matter of time before something bad happens. And when it does, the industry restraint that comes from that is always heavy-handed, and then it filters over into other avenues, like security, like working in a bouncing capacity at a club. So that's kind of my convoluted take on it. So Kyler just asked me a question. What are my thoughts on Patty Mayo? If you're not aware of who Patty Mayo, he's like a bail enforcement recovery agent. My stance has always been that his content is scripted. Now, it could be that his content is scripted from situations that have actually happened. I think that sometimes you'll see channels like that where they actually take a report from someone who made an arrest or made a recovery, and they're reenacting it. Now, I don't know, for my knowledge, I don't know that he's ever declared that his things are scripted. I don't know if he's ever really talked about it one way or the other, but to me, clearly, a lot of what I've seen him do is scripted. You're seeing more of that now, and then definitely with the rise of AI, I'm starting to see security guard centered content where it's all AI created as well. There's actually a guy that's doing a jiu-jitsu channel. I've been following this guy for 2 months, and it just dawned on me that every video that he makes, he's in the car, he's wearing the same outfit, and he's driving, and you don't really see a lot of stuff in the background. As I watched his video this morning, it dawned on me, this is AI. This is like an avatar that's utilizing his voice and maybe a likeness that's similar to his, but this thing looks so fucking real. But it's crazy. I've watched, 30 of this guy's videos, and it just dawned on me today, something's not right here, and this is clearly AI. So I think that the fact that you get paid by making content, I'm making content right now as well. The fact that you can make money by making content, it pushes people to create more and more controversial or more exciting content. And so you're going to see people that are scripting content and utilizing AI. There's actually a body camera channel right now on YouTube where a lot of the body cam videos are getting hundreds and thousands of views or millions of views. And so now they're recreating these body cam videos where it's a police officer approaching someone and doing something wrong, and the whole situation devolves and goes crazy. But when you look at it, there's no markings on the police vehicle, there's no uniform markings on the police officer. The people that they're interacting with are wearing real, kind of slightly off type clothing. So the more you look into it, you're seeing that this stuff is staged. So I think you're gonna see more of that in the next coming years, because the opportunity to make money and income off of content is only gonna get bigger. And so I think you're gonna see more of that in law enforcement, on the security side, on the bail enforcement side. But shout out to Patty Mayo, because that's gonna make him one of the OG creators of that type of content. And to his credit, I guess he's doing pretty good with it. So that's my thoughts. Huh? It don't look like you? It kinda. It don't look like you? Hey, he look like you, bro.
I bet the good looking at it, bro. He don't look like me. He might look like Asian. But he'll be different looking.
You're different looking?
I'm better looking.
You're better looking than him.
Yeah.
There you go. All right. Yeah. What are your thoughts on private security being deployed as strike breakers throughout history? Private security has often been retained by private companies like coal and oil companies to squash labor union strikes, often using violence to do so. In your opinion, does this make private security inherently anti-union, anti-labor, anti-worker? I think that, unfortunately, private security kind of falls into this paid mercenary type category. People are expecting there to be some sort of law enforcement-esque type presence in those situations. Generally, private companies, private property, they're hiring private security to either keep people off property, protect property, or maintain some type of order. I don't have a stance on a lot of the things that I find myself being involved in private security, and that's really one of the reasons why I like it. My political views, my personal views, whatever, they don't really come into play when I'm working in this capacity in private security, because I'm simply there to do a job. I think that in law enforcement, maybe even in the military and a lot of other industries in 2025, you're seeing people's personal and political views kind of bleed over into their industry. One of the great things that I like about private security work in every capacity is that you're just doing a job, right? And that can seem somewhat insensitive based on what you're talking about right now, the question that you're asking. I don't think that inherently makes us anti-union. I don't think that inherently makes us anti-strike, but we are there to maintain order. We are there to maintain property boundaries. And if that runs up against those two things, then there's going to be some sort of conflict. But that conflict is not going to be with me. And it's not going to be with most security officers, because they're simply doing a job. And I know that simply doing a job is not necessarily an answer that people want to hear, but I don't have enough experience or understanding of the historical context of what you're talking about to really give you a take on it, other than just my view and feeling on it from a business standpoint and from a work mission type standpoint. So hopefully that helps. All right, guys, thanks for joining me for today's episode of Walk and Talk, America's Security Guard. And remember, if you have questions, we have answers. Just drop them in the comments and we'll answer them on the next episode. You guys be great. Take care.